Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. I have two interlinked stories here. The first one is the main one, but the second one is gives an example of why the first one is so important. Now, the first one, it's all about women's rights. There's going to be a debate today. It's probably happening as I'm recording this, and it's about the Equality Act and its basis on the rights and protections of women. And they're basically trying to get it to be clarified that the 2010 Act, the Equality Act, when it refers to sex, it absolutely means biological sex, not any kind of assumed or pretended gender. So when it talks about the rights of male and female, it means they're biological. The biological male, the biological female, and that is to ensure that women are actually protected in law. And to back this up, once we go through that, then to back this up is the other story, which we'll just glance on, but it goes to show why this is absolutely needed. It is urgently needed. So we'll go straight into the first one, and then we'll glance over to the second one. Here goes. So don't bow to the trans lobby over women's rights. MPs to urge ministers ahead of a long-awaited parliamentary debate on the equality laws being rewritten on the basis of biology rather than gender identity. This long-awaited parliamentary debate will hear fresh demands for equality laws to be corrected. Ministers today will be urged by MPs to press ahead with legal reforms that would protect women's rights, despite fierce opposition from mentally ill men who want to remove those rights, who want to have access to safe spaces for women, because the last thing they want is women to feel safe. A long-awaited parliamentary debate will hear fresh demands for equality laws to be rewritten on the basis of biology rather than identity. And that, of course, is the only way that these things can actually be correct and fair. The proposed far-reaching change to the Equality Act 2010 would stop transgender men accessing female-only spaces, including hospital wards, prisons and toilets. And quite right, there are attacks on women, ours, of women in hospital. When she's called the police have turned up and the hospital have said that it cannot have happened because there was no men in that locked ward. When in fact what there was in that ward was a man who wanted everyone to pretend he was a woman. He then attacked this woman. The NHS are guilty of aiding and abetting the R of women because they are too scared to stand up to these mentally ill men and say, no, you're a man, you get in the men's ward. I don't care what is wrong with your mental processing, you are biologically male, in you go. That's all it takes. The trouble was this law was written in a time when people weren't overly bothered about mentally ill people demanding super rights so that they could have access to women's spaces and to remove rights and freedoms that women had struggled for 100 years to get. It is expected to be backed by Equality Minister Kemi Badenoch with the support of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, but it has provoked a backlash from others who see it as an attack on trans rights. No one is stopping a trans doing anything. What they are saying is men cannot go in to where women have got their safe spaces. And no one's stopping a trans getting on a bus. No one is stopping a trans, getting a job. What they're doing is they're saying women who are the victims of certain things need to feel safe. They must have their safe spaces. Last week, the Prime Minister indicated he would change the law to protect women-only spaces. It's probably the only thing Mowgli has ever stood up and said that is correct and which the vast majority of people want. Speaking on his flight to Washington DC, Sunak said, I've been very clear that when it comes to matters like this, biological sex is fundamentally important. I've said that multiple times. And with regard to the Equality Act in particular, the government has specifically asked for advice from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and then obviously we will review that. And as the Mail revealed last month, staff at the EHRC tried to oust its chairman, Baroness Faulkner, over her backing for the legal clarification. In other words, the EHCR people don't want legal clarification of a law. because they know that if it was legally clarified, then it would provide women with safe spaces. And heaven to Betsy, they don't want that. Today's Westminster Hall debate will examine the demand that the government modify the operation of the Equality Act 2010 by specifying the terms sex, male, female, man and woman mean biological sex, not legal sex, which can be changed by a trans person obtaining a gender recognition certificate. No, it can't. No, the gender recognition certificate does not change anyone's sex. It merely changes their gender. The two are not the same. Anyone who thinks they're the same is very, very stupid and ignorant. Gender and sex are not the same. Backbencher Tory Nick Fletcher, who is planning to speak, told the Mail, "We need to get back to being able to use plain English words like man, woman, sex, with everyone knowing exactly what we mean. The confusion about these words has now impacted the Equality Act and its ability to make clear provision for single-sex services and spaces. This impacts on the dignity and privacy, and I'm going to say the safety, of women and girls." Other Tory MPs expected to speak include Miriam Cates, God bless her, one of the good ones, who has led calls for a review of inappropriate sex education classes in schools. The debate will consider an opposing motion with 138,000 signatures, which states the government has previously committed to not remove legal protections for trans people, but this change would do so. It does not remove any legal protection for trans people. It enforces the protection in law for women and for girls. And we need to know why they need to be protected. Well, we're going to cut over to this. Domestic A survivor is terrified after a man dressed as a woman is allowed to stay in a female-only dorm and is seen by the occupants sprawled out, half undressed, on a bed. And we're not talking the top half. So a man dressed as a woman was allowed to stay in a female-only dorm by a hostel, which forced a terrified DA survivor to find alternative accommodation late at night. The man who booked the room in a female-only dorm at the Astor Victoria Hostel in Pimlico, under the name of Alison, not his real name, was seen by female occupants sprawled out on the bed, half undressed, and displaying his male genitalia. This is in a domestic A hostel. If anywhere should be a safe space for women, it is this. And they let in a man because they're too scared not to, in case some mentally ill men go, oh, blah, 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 blah. We got our rights. No, you haven't. If you want a hostel, set up your own hostel. Set up a hostel for the mentally ill who want everyone to pretend that their falsehood is real. And then you've got your happy. And then we just won't let women and real men in there. Everyone's happy then. But no. That's not what this is about. This is about men with these mental illnesses demanding access to female safe spaces so that they can do things to these women. And we have to remember that they are 10 times more likely to be sex offenders than normal people. That's the government's own figures. The 55-year-old from Shropshire travelled to London for 2 nights on the 28th of May for the Let Women Speak event, which covered the importance of safe spaces for females. Well, it's so damn ironic you couldn't make it up. She told the Sunday Telegraph, "I was about to go to bed when one of the other women informed me they'd discovered a man dressed as a woman sprawled out on the bed with his male bits on display." And this is why you need this debate in the Commons today, and that 2010 Act clearly and incontrovertibly states that sex means biological sex, not the weird delusions of the mentally ill. And I'm coming up. So you have this debate today, and at the end of it they will have a vote. And ultimately what this means is anyone who votes against this proposal is voting to endanger women and children. There's no two ways about it. This is what they're doing. If they're saying they're not prepared to protect women and particularly girls from men by actually having designated safe spaces for them, they're effectively legalising the attacks upon women and girls because they're not offering any protection in law for women. And every person who votes for it needs to have their name published. And then the people in those various constituencies up and down the country will learn whether their MP voted to endanger the safety of women and children. And then at the next election, they vote accordingly. And let's get these monsters out. Let's get these people who are willing to do this out of power. Because no MP should be allowed to pass a law that actively encourages the endangerment of women. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, guard your women, guard your children, guard everything from these weirdos. And goodbye.